Am I the asshole for completely vanishing from my family after they told me the greatest wedding gift I could give my sister would be to disappear forever? I'm Sarah Michelle Brooks, 29, and what happened in Cedar Falls, Oregon, destroyed everything I thought I knew about family. My parents own Brooks Family Bakery, picture perfect from the outside, toxic as hell behind closed doors. My sister Emma was getting married, and I'd spent months planning her dream wedding. Then the wedding cake got damaged during transport. One tiny crack in the fondant, fixable in minutes. But standing in our kitchen, my mother Kate looked me dead in the eye and said, "You know what, Sarah? The greatest gift you could give Emma for her wedding would be if you just disappeared from our family permanently." My father Bob nodded. "It's time, Sarah. You don't belong here." Those words shattered something inside me that had been breaking for 29 years. The daughter who spent her whole life chasing approval that was never coming. So I gave them exactly what they asked for. I disappeared. Completely. Vanished without a trace. But here's what they didn't expect. Their perfect family business, their golden reputation, their carefully constructed life. It all came crashing down without me. And the secrets that surfaced when I was gone? They're about to destroy everything they hold dear. Stick around, because what happened next will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about family loyalty. That morning started like any wedding day should, chaotic but magical. I'd been up since 4 a.m., coordinating with vendors, checking off my endless lists. Emma's wedding was happening at Riverside Gardens, the most prestigious venue in Cedar Falls, and everything had to be flawless. I was driving the wedding cake from our family bakery, Brooks Family Bakery, where my parents, Kate and Bob, had built their reputation over 30 years. This wasn't just any cake. It was a 4-tier masterpiece with hand-piped roses and delicate fondant work that I'd spent 2 weeks perfecting alongside our head decorator. The cake was my peace offering, my final attempt to prove I belonged in this family. After 29 years of being compared to my perfect sister Emma, the successful lawyer in Seattle, I thought this wedding might finally bridge the gap. But Oregon's spring weather had other plans. A pothole I couldn't avoid sent the cake box sliding, and I heard the sickening sound of fondant cracking. My heart stopped. When I opened the box at the venue, there it was, a hairline crack running down one side of the bottom tier. Fixable, completely fixable with some strategic frosting and decorative elements. But I was already spiraling, knowing how my parents would react. I called my mom, my voice shaking. "Kate, there's a small issue with the cake, but I can fix it in 10 minutes. The silence on the other end was deafening. Then, "Sarah Michelle Brooks, you had one job. By the time I got to my parents' house behind the bakery, the whole family was waiting. Emma stood in her getting-ready robe, her future husband James awkwardly holding coffee. My parents had their arms crossed, faces already set in disappointment. "Show us!" my father Bob demanded. I opened the box, explaining how easily we could fix it, but Kate's face was already twisting with years of pent-up frustration. "This is exactly what I expected from you, Sarah. You ruin everything you touch." Emma finally spoke up, but not to defend me. "Sarah, today is supposed to be perfect. I trusted you with this." The room felt like it was closing in. James looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. These people, my family, were staring at me like I'd committed murder over a tiny crack in fondant. That's when my mother delivered the blow that changed everything. Her voice was cold, calculated, designed to hurt. "You know what, Sarah? The greatest gift you could give Emma for her wedding would be if you just disappeared from our family permanently? My father nodded, his voice equally cold. It's time, Sarah. You don't belong here. The words hit me like a freight train, confirming every fear I'd harbored my entire life. Let me paint you the picture of my family, because understanding these people is crucial to what comes next. My mother, Catherine Kate Brooks, 58, is Cedar Falls royalty. She built Brooks Family Bakery from nothing, and the community worships her. What they don't see is the woman who kept a mental scorecard of every way I disappointed her, delivering cruelest words with a perfect smile. My father, Robert Bob Brooks, 60, is Kate's silent enforcer. Everyone loves his dad jokes and free samples, but at home, he'd nod along to her criticisms. Your sister would have handled this better. Then there's Emma Victoria Brooks Anderson, 32, the golden child. Harvard Law graduate, successful attorney in Seattle. Emma floats through life collecting achievements while everyone else does the work. But here's what I didn't know then. Emma had her own secrets. Secrets that would surface when my disappearance triggered an investigation into our family's finances. The red flags were always there. Family photos where I was slightly out of frame. Christmas gifts where Emma got thoughtful. Expensive items while I got practical ones. But the biggest red flag? How quickly they accepted my departure. Most families would search for a missing daughter, call police, hire investigators. Mine celebrated. And that celebration? It caught the attention of people who'd been watching our family for reasons I never imagined. Because when someone disappears and their family doesn't report it missing, when business accounts suddenly become inaccessible, when vendor relationships dissolve overnight, well, that raises questions. Questions that very important people wanted answered. What I discovered about my family's perfect reputation was about to shatter everything they'd built. Growing up in Cedar Falls, Oregon, our house sat behind Brooks Family Bakery on Maple Street, where fresh bread scent wafted through our kitchen windows. From the outside, we looked like the American dream. But inside those walls, I learned early that love was conditional. Emma was born when my parents were young and hopeful. By the time I came along 3 years later, they'd already decided she was their masterpiece. I have this vivid memory from age 5. I'd drawn our family with crayons, so proud of coloring inside the lines. I ran to show Kate, bouncing with excitement. She barely glanced before saying, "That's nice, honey. Emma, show Sarah the story you wrote." Emma, 8 years old, had written about our bakery. Kate read every word aloud, her voice filled with pride I'd never hear directed at my work. That became our pattern. I'd achieve something, honor roll, art contest, first job, and somehow Emma's accomplishments would overshadow mine. When I got into Portland State with a partial scholarship, Kate's response was, "That's wonderful. Emma just got into Harvard Law. Can you believe it?" The night of my high school lead performance in our town, I scanned the audience during my biggest monologue. They weren't there. Kate had driven to Seattle to help Emma move apartments. Bob stayed home with a headache. But here's what I didn't realize then. While I was desperately performing for their approval, they were keeping secrets. Big ones. College offered brief freedom. At Portland State, I flourished in marketing classes, had friends who saw me as Sarah the individual. I dated Tyler, who made me feel worthy of love. But every holiday brought me back to Cedar Falls, back to familiar disappointment. After graduation, I had a choice. Take a marketing position in Portland or help expand the bakery. Kate called crying, saying they needed me. That family came first. Like a fool, I came home. For 6 years, I worked at a local firm while spending weekends at the bakery. I redesigned their website, managed social media, modernized their brand, all while Emma sent occasional care packages and got praised for staying connected. I convinced myself this was temporary. Once they saw my value, things would change. I watched Emma's career soar while I stayed stuck, making myself indispensable to people who took me for granted. But the most painful discovery was yet to come. While I sacrificed my dreams, my parents had been planning for a future that didn't include me. The succession documents, the vendor contracts, the business partnerships, everything had Emma's name, not mine. 6 years of unpaid labor, and I was written out of the will like hired help. The worst part of me was grateful for any attention, even criticism. Grateful to be needed, even if I wasn't truly wanted. That gratitude died the day they told me to disappear forever. But what they didn't know was that their perfect family had been living on borrowed time. Because while I was busy trying to earn their love, someone else had been watching our family very closely. And when I disappeared, that someone decided it was time to ask some very uncomfortable questions about Brooks Family Bakery's business practices. The months leading up to Emma's wedding should have been magical. Instead, they became a masterclass in everything wrong with our family dynamics, building to revelations that would destroy more than just our relationships. It started in January when Emma announced her engagement to James. Kate squealed with delight, grabbing the phone for an hour-long celebration while I sat eating pot roast, invisible as always. When Emma mentioned wanting a fall wedding in Cedar Falls, Kate's eyes lit up. "We'll make it the event of the season. Sarah can help. She's good at organizing things." The way she said it, like I was convenient assistance rather than Emma's sister, should have been my first warning. I threw myself into planning with desperate enthusiasm. Maybe this would finally prove my worth. I took vacation days, stayed up until midnight researching, created detailed spreadsheets tracking every aspect. Kate had opinions about everything, but her feedback came wrapped in criticism. When I suggested a romantic garden theme, "That's nice, but Emma probably wants something more sophisticated." When I found amazing florist rates, "Are they prestigious enough for the Brooks family reputation?" Emma was largely absent from planning. "I trust you and Mom to handle details," she'd say, before launching into stories about her latest case. She treated the wedding like another to-do list item someone else would manage. But here's what I didn't realize. While I was planning Emma's perfect day, someone else was investigating our family's perfect facade. The venue search was brutal. Kate rejected my first 3 suggestions. Too small, too casual, too expensive. When I found Riverside Gardens, perfect for Emma's vision and budget, Kate's response was, "I suppose it will have to do." The dress shopping in May was when cracks really started showing. Portland salon trip, I'd researched shops, made appointments, arranged champagne and lunch. But from the moment we walked in, I became invisible. Kate and Emma bonded over dress styles while I held purses and took photos. When Emma found the dress, Kate actually teared up. "You look like a princess." When had she ever looked at me like that? Later, when Emma was changing, Kate turned to me. "I hope you'll find something nice to wear. Nothing too attention-grabbing, though. This is Emma's day." But what neither of us knew was that our family's finances were already under scrutiny. The IRS had been quietly reviewing Brooks Family Bakery's books for months, triggered by discrepancies someone had reported anonymously. The breaking point started building in August when I suggested handling the wedding cake in-house. It made perfect sense. Save money, showcase our business, create something special. Kate loved the idea, then came the inevitable. Of course, I'll supervise the design. We can't afford any mistakes. I'd been decorating cakes since age 12, had won regional competitions, perfected my skills for years. But Kate insisted on approving every element. When I suggested sugar flour cascades, she worried they looked too amateur. When I proposed elegant piping work, she fretted it wasn't modern enough. The week before the wedding, everything reached fever pitch. Emma and James arrived from Seattle, and our house became a 24/7 wedding command center. Kate bustled around playing perfect hostess while assigning me endless tasks. Pick up flowers, confirm photographer, check catering setup. Emma held court in the living room, accepting congratulations from visiting relatives. I watched from the kitchen, making coffee runs and clearing dishes, while everyone told her how radiant she looked. When Emma's college roommate asked about me, Emma said, "Oh, that's just Sarah. She's been amazing helping with wedding stuff." Just Sarah, like hired help rather than her sister. But what we didn't know was that federal investigators had been building a case against our family business. Tax evasion, fraudulent vendor contracts, money laundering through catering accounts, activities that had been happening right under my nose while I focused on earning their approval. The night before the wedding, we had a family dinner that felt like a performance where everyone knew their roles except me. Kate toasted Emma's journey. Bob shared stories about James fitting perfectly into our family. Emma thanked everyone for making her dream wedding possible. When my turn came, I raised my glass and said something about being proud to be Emma's sister, hoping for her happiness. The words felt hollow, performative. After dinner, Kate pulled me aside. Instead of a moment of connection, she handed me a list of last-minute tasks for the morning. "I know I can count on you to handle these details, Sarah. Emma deserves everything to be perfect." That night, lying in my childhood bedroom surrounded by wedding planning binders, I stared at the ceiling, feeling that familiar ache. No matter what I did, I would always be supporting cast in their production. But while I lay there questioning my worth, federal agents were finalizing their investigation timeline. They'd been waiting for the perfect moment to move, when the family would be distracted, when emotions would be high, when their carefully constructed world would be most vulnerable. The wedding was supposed to be Emma's perfect day. Instead, it was about to become the day our family's darkest secrets finally surfaced. Because sometimes, when you spend so much energy maintaining a perfect facade, you forget that someone might be watching from the shadows, documenting every lie, every hidden transaction, every moment when you thought no one was paying attention. And what they'd discovered about Brooks Family Bakery was about to change everything I thought I knew about the people who raised me. The wedding morning arrived with organs drizzle. But inside Brooks Family Bakery, everything was controlled chaos. I'd been there since 5 a.m., putting finishing touches on Emma's 4-tier wedding cake, my masterpiece that would finally prove I belonged. Each tier represented Emma's favorite flavors: vanilla bean with raspberry, chocolate with salted caramel, lemon with cream cheese, and her favorite strawberry cake I'd perfected years ago. The decoration was intricate sugarwork, cascading white roses with pearl details that caught the light perfectly. Kate inspected it like a hawk circling prey. "It's acceptable," she finally said, high praise from her. "Just don't mess up getting it to the venue." The drive to Riverside Gardens was 15 minutes, but I treated that cake like the crown jewels. I knew every pothole on this route, but sometimes the universe has other plans. Cedar Creek Road construction. Despite my careful planning, I hit uneven pavement. The cake box shifted just enough that I heard something that made my heart stop, the subtle sound of fondant cracking. I pulled over immediately, hands shaking as I opened the box. There it was, a hairline crack running 4 inches down the bottom tier. To most people, barely noticeable. To my perfectionist family, catastrophe. I called Kate, trying to keep steady. "There's a tiny crack, but I can fix it in 10 minutes with strategic piping and extra roses." She cut me off. "A crack? Sarah, this is Emma's wedding day." "I know, but it's completely fixable. I have supplies, and honestly, most people won't even notice." "Get to the house, now. Don't touch anything else." The drive back felt like a funeral procession. Walking into my parents' kitchen felt like entering a courtroom where the verdict was decided. Kate stood by the island, arms crossed, somehow intimidating even in her robe. Bob sat at the table, coffee clenched in his hands. Emma was there with her half-finished updo, and James awkwardly holding coffee like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Show us," Kate demanded. I opened the box with careful reverence. The crack looked even smaller in bright kitchen light, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. I started explaining my repair plan, but their faces told me they weren't interested in solutions. "This is exactly what I expected," Kate said, her voice carrying 29 years of disappointment. "You ruin everything you touch, Sarah." Emma's voice was quieter but cutting. "Sarah, today is supposed to be perfect." "I trusted you with this." Bob's contribution was a resigned sigh. "We should have hired a professional instead of trusting family." But what came next revealed something far more sinister than family disappointment. Kate's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and her face went white. It's Agent Martinez from the IRS." My blood ran cold. "IRS? On Emma's wedding day?" Kate answered with fake cheerfulness. "Hello, this is Catherine Brooks. I'm sorry, but today isn't a good day. My daughter's getting married." I watched her face change from confusion to panic to pure terror. "What do you mean, irregularities in our business accounts?" "There must be some mistake. Yes, I understand the seriousness, but surely this can wait until after the wedding." Bob was on his feet now, his face ashen. Emma looked confused, but I was starting to understand. All those vendor contracts I'd managed, all those payments I'd processed, all those receipts I'd filed. Kate hung up, her hands shaking. "They want to meet with us tomorrow morning. They're investigating our business practices for the past 5 years." 5 years. Exactly how long I'd been managing the bakery's financial systems? Emma's voice was small. "What kind of investigation?" Kate couldn't meet anyone's eyes. "Tax evasion, fraudulent vendor contracts, money laundering." The room fell silent except for the sound of my heart pounding. All those late nights I'd spent organizing their books, all those transactions I'd processed without asking questions, all those vendor relationships I'd managed. I'd been the unwitting accomplice to crimes I didn't even know were happening. But the worst part? The look on Kate's face wasn't guilt or fear. It was calculation. She was already planning how to blame this on someone else. Someone expendable. Someone who just proved she was unreliable by cracking a wedding cake. Someone like me. And in that moment, I realized their demand for me to disappear wasn't about Emma's wedding at all. It was about making sure I wouldn't be around to answer federal investigators' questions about Brooks Family Bakery's business practices. The cake crack wasn't their excuse to get rid of me. It was their cover story. Piping work, but their faces told me they weren't interested in solutions. "This is exactly what I expected," Kate said, her voice carrying 29 years of accumulated disappointment. "You ruin everything you touch, Sarah." Emma's voice was quieter, but somehow more cutting. "Sarah, today is supposed to be perfect. I trusted you with this." Bob's contribution was the resigned sigh of someone who'd given up hope. "We should have hired a professional baker instead of trusting family." The words hit me like physical blows, each one confirming what I'd always feared, that no matter how hard I tried, I would always be the family screw-up. The daughter who couldn't be trusted with the important things. But what came next was so much worse than disappointment. What came next was the moment my family showed their true colors, revealing just how expendable they'd always considered me. The first reveal wasn't about the cake at all. It was about them. After their devastating words and the IRS bombshell, something inside me shifted from hurt to cold determination. As I sat in my car outside Riverside Gardens, one thought consumed me. If my family could discard me so easily and potentially frame me for federal crimes, what other truths had I been blind to? I didn't go home that night. Instead, I drove to my apartment and started investigating my own life. But this wasn't just about family photos anymore. This was about potential criminal liability. I pulled out years of business documents, vendor contracts, financial records. Every receipt I'd filed, every payment I'd processed for Brooks Family Bakery. I needed to understand exactly what I'd been involved in. The patterns were obvious once I stopped making excuses. Vendor invoices that didn't match delivery receipts. Catering contracts with inflated prices, where the extra money disappeared into unnamed accounts. Cash payments to suppliers who didn't exist when I verified their business licenses. But what I found next made my blood run cold. My name was on most of these documents as the family business's financial coordinator. If the IRS was investigating, I wasn't just a witness. I was potentially a co-conspirator facing federal prison time. I called Rebecca Chen, the attorney I'd consulted about family business disputes. But this time, it wasn't about succession planning. This was about criminal defense. "Sarah, this is serious," she said after reviewing the documents. "Your signature is on contracts for non-existent vendors, inflated service agreements, suspicious cash transactions. Even if you were unaware, the IRS could argue willful blindness and charge you as an accomplice." That afternoon, I met with Thomas Rivera, a federal crimes attorney. I laid out everything, the years of managing financial systems I didn't understand, the wedding day IRS call, my family's demand that I disappear. Thomas studied the documents grimly. "Sarah, your family has been running a sophisticated money laundering operation through the bakery. Wedding catering was perfect cover. High-value cash transactions, multiple vendors, legitimate business expenses that are hard to track." "How long has this been going on?" "At least 5 years. Coincidentally, exactly how long you've been managing their books." The implication hit me like a freight train. They'd made me the unwitting face of their criminal enterprise. If anyone was going to prison, it would be me, not them. There's something else, Thomas continued. The IRS doesn't randomly investigate small bakeries. Someone reported your family. Someone with inside knowledge of their operations. I thought about that for days, trying to figure out who could have exposed my family. Then I remembered something odd from 6 months ago. Emma had asked detailed questions about the bakery's vendor contracts during one of her visits. Not casual interest, but specific questions about pricing, payment methods, cash transactions. At the time, I'd been proud she was finally showing interest in the family business. But what I discovered next shattered everything I thought I knew about my sister. Emma wasn't the successful attorney we'd all believed. Her law firm had been under investigation for client fund misappropriation. She'd been suspended from practice 6 months ago, facing potential disbarment and criminal charges. The expensive Seattle lifestyle, the lavish wedding, the designer everything. It was all funded by money she'd stolen from client accounts. Money she needed to pay back before her criminal trial began. Emma needed Brooks Family Bakery to fail. She needed someone else to take the blame for financial irregularities discovered during the bankruptcy process. Someone like her naive sister who'd been signing documents without asking questions. But there was more. I found email exchanges between Emma and James that painted an even darker picture. The wedding wasn't a celebration of love. It was a business meeting disguised as a family event, where they finalized plans to frame me for both the bakery's crimes and Emma's own legal troubles. And then I found the smoking gun that changed everything. The crack in the wedding cake wasn't bad luck. I found the receipt. Emma had paid someone to damage the road construction area, ensuring I'd hit that specific pothole at the exact moment when the IRS call would create maximum chaos and suspicion. Every detail had been planned. The demand that I disappear, the public humiliation, the systematic destruction of my reputation. It was all designed to make me look like a guilty party fleeing justice. But Emma had made one crucial mistake. She'd assumed I was too weak and desperate for approval to fight back. She'd counted on me accepting blame for crimes I didn't knowingly commit, disappearing quietly while she rebuilt her life with stolen money. She was wrong. I spent the next 3 days documenting everything. Emma's financial troubles, the suspicious timing of her questions about bakery operations, the evidence that she'd orchestrated the cake damage. I compiled a comprehensive report showing how she'd manipulated our family situation to cover her own crimes. Thomas reviewed my findings with growing amazement. "Sarah, you've just uncovered one of the most sophisticated family fraud schemes I've ever seen." Emma didn't just report your parents to deflect from her own legal troubles. She's been orchestrating this entire setup for months. What do we do now? We contact the IRS immediately. You're going from potential defendant to star witness. With this evidence, you can expose the real criminals and clear your name completely. That night, I made the decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to disappear like they wanted. I wasn't going to take the blame for crimes I didn't commit. I was going to tell the truth. All of it, to federal investigators who would ensure justice was served. Because tomorrow morning, when the IRS met with my family, they'd be expecting to interview potential criminals. Instead, they'd be meeting the key witness who could send the real perpetrators to federal prison. Emma wanted me to disappear? I was about to make her wish she'd never been born. The federal building in Portland felt like entering a cathedral of justice. I sat in the waiting room with Thomas Rivera, my criminal defense attorney, watching Kate, Bob, and Emma arrive for what they thought would be a routine interview about tax irregularities. They had no idea they were walking into an ambush. Emma looked confident, polished in her designer suit, probably thinking she could charm her way through federal questioning. Kate and Bob appeared nervous but defiant, like they'd practiced their story about the disgruntled daughter who sabotaged their business. Agent Martinez greeted them with professional courtesy, leading them to a conference room. I watched through the one-way glass as they settled into chairs, Emma whispering reassurances to her parents. "Are you ready for this?" Thomas asked. I nodded, though my heart was pounding. They destroyed my life thinking I was too weak to fight back. Time to show them who Sarah Brooks really is. Agent Martinez began with standard questions about Brooks Family Bakery's financial practices. Kate and Bob gave rehearsed answers about being just simple bakers who trusted their daughter Sarah to handle the complicated paperwork. Then, Agent Martinez dropped the first bomb. "Mrs. Brooks, are you aware that your daughter Emma Anderson has been under federal investigation for embezzling over $500,000 from client accounts at her Seattle law firm?" The room went silent. Kate's face drained of color. Bob actually dropped his coffee cup. But Emma barely flinched. She'd been expecting this. "I don't see how my sister's legal troubles relate to our bakery," Emma said smoothly. Agent Martinez smiled coldly. "Because, Miss Anderson, we have evidence that you've been using your family's business to launder stolen money, and we have a witness who can detail exactly how you orchestrated this scheme." That's when they brought me in. The look on their faces when I walked through that door was everything I dreamed of, and more. Kate gasped audibly. Bob's mouth fell open. But Emma's perfect composure finally cracked. "Sarah?" Kate whispered. "What are you doing here?" "Telling the truth," I said, taking my seat across from them. "Something this family has never been good at." Agent Martinez gestured for me to begin. I looked directly at Emma, watching her squirm as I laid out everything I'd discovered. For 6 months, Emma has been preparing to pin her embezzlement charges on our family bakery. She reported the business to the IRS herself, providing just enough information to trigger an investigation that would uncover years of money laundering. Money laundering she orchestrated using my access to financial systems. Kate tried to interrupt, but Agent Martinez silenced her with a look. I continued, my voice gaining strength with each word. "Emma has been stealing from client accounts in Seattle for over 2 years. When her law firm started investigating, she needed a way to explain where the money went and someone else to blame for financial crimes." I slid a thick folder across the table. "These are email exchanges between Emma and her fiancé, James, planning how to frame me for both her embezzlement and the bakery's money laundering. They needed me gone before the investigation began, so Emma manipulated the wedding day confrontation." Bob found his voice. "That's impossible. Emma would never." "Emma paid someone to damage the construction area on Cedar Creek Road," I interrupted. "She knew I'd hit that specific pothole with the wedding cake, creating the crisis that would justify kicking me out of the family right before the IRS interview." Emma finally spoke, her voice ice cold. "You can't prove any of this." I smiled, pulling out my phone. "Actually, I can. Remember when you called me after the wedding, Emma? You thought I was too hurt to record our conversation. You were wrong." I pressed play on a recording I'd made during Emma's apology call weeks earlier. Emma's voice filled the room. "Sarah, I know you think you're smart, but you have no idea what's really happening here. The bakery investigation was always going to happen. I just made sure it happened on my timeline, with you as the fall guy. You were supposed to disappear quietly, take some blame, maybe serve a few years for financial crimes you were too stupid to understand you were committing." Kate gasped. Bob looked like he might vomit. But Emma was finally showing her true face. The recording continued. "Mom and Dad don't know about my Seattle problems, and they're not going to. You're going to take responsibility for the bakery's money laundering because you're weak, desperate, and have no other choice. James and I will rebuild the business after you're in prison, and everyone wins except the sister who was always too pathetic to matter anyway." The silence in the room was deafening. Kate stared at Emma like she was seeing a stranger. Bob's hands were shaking. Agent Martinez leaned forward. "Ms. Anderson, you're under arrest for conspiracy, money laundering, embezzlement, and obstruction of justice." But I wasn't done. I had one more bomb to drop. "There's something else," I said, looking directly at Kate and Bob. "The succession plan that cuts me out of the bakery inheritance? Emma forged your signatures. She's been planning to steal the family business along with everything else." I produced the handwriting analysis Thomas had commissioned. "Emma has been practicing your signatures for months, preparing to transfer bakery ownership to herself the moment you were arrested or hospitalized from the stress of this investigation." Kate's composure finally shattered completely. "Emma, how could you do this to us? To your own sister?" Emma laughed, a cold, bitter sound. "Own sister? Sarah was never really family. She was useful labor, nothing more. You two made that clear enough over the years." The federal agents were placing handcuffs on Emma as she continued her rant. "You want to know the truth? I've hated both of you for years. Small-town people with small-town dreams, dragging me down with your mediocrity. This bakery, this family, this pathetic life. I was going to burn it all down anyway." She looked directly at me as they led her toward the door. "You think you've won something, Sarah? You've destroyed the only family you'll ever have. Enjoy your victory. It's going to be very lonely." But as the door closed behind her, I felt nothing but relief. The sister I'd spent 29 years trying to please had never existed. The woman they'd just arrested was a stranger who'd been manipulating our family for years. Agent Martinez turned to Kate and Bob. "You'll need to hire attorneys. While Sarah's cooperation has helped clarify your level of involvement, you're still facing charges related to the money laundering operation." Kate looked at me with tears streaming down her face. "Sarah, we didn't know. Emma told us the financial irregularities were just bookkeeping errors you'd made. We thought you were incompetent, not that she was using you." For a moment, I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. "You spent 29 years making me feel worthless," I said quietly. "When Emma told you I was responsible for financial crimes, you didn't question it because it fit your narrative about me being the family failure. You were ready to let me take the blame for felonies rather than consider that your perfect daughter might be lying." Bob tried to speak, but I held up my hand. "Emma may have orchestrated this specific scheme, but you two created the family dynamic that made it possible. You taught her that I was expendable, that my feelings didn't matter, that I existed to serve your needs." "She just took those lessons to their logical conclusion," Thomas guided me toward the exit as Kate called after me. "Sarah, please, we can fix this. We're still family." I turned back one final time, looking at the people who'd raised me but never truly loved me. "No," I said. "Family doesn't throw each other away when it's convenient. Family doesn't let one child torture another for decades. Family doesn't choose favorites and call it love." I walked out of that federal building, knowing I'd never see them again. Emma would spend years in federal prison. Kate and Bob would likely face financial ruin and possible jail time. The Brooks family name would be destroyed. But for the first time in my life, I felt free. Justice wasn't just about Emma facing consequences for her crimes. It was about me finally understanding my own worth, refusing to accept cruelty disguised as love, and choosing myself over people who'd never choose me. The scared little girl who'd spent her life chasing approval had died in that conference room. The woman walking out was someone entirely new, someone who would never again apologize for taking up space in the world. The drive to Savannah took 4 days, and with each mile, I felt lighter. By the time I crossed the Georgia state line, Sarah Brooks felt like someone I used to know rather than someone I used to be. I was ready to become whoever I was meant to be when I wasn't constantly trying to earn love from people incapable of giving it. Savannah welcomed me like an old friend. I found a charming apartment in the Victorian district with high ceilings and original hardwood floors. The landlord, Mrs. Eleanor Washington, was a retired teacher who took one look at me and said, "You've got the look of someone starting over, honey." This city's good for that. I registered my freelance marketing business as Sarah Michelle Creative and quickly found clients who appreciated my skills. Without the constant drain of unpaid bakery work, I had energy and creativity I'd forgotten I possessed. My portfolio grew, my reputation spread, and for the first time in years, I felt professionally fulfilled. But the real justice began unfolding back in Cedar Falls, though I wouldn't learn the details until much later. Within 2 weeks of my departure, Brooks Family Bakery's online presence had completely collapsed. Their website showed error messages. Their Instagram account had been locked due to failed login attempts, and their Facebook page hadn't been updated since I left. Wedding inquiries that normally came through social media disappeared overnight. Kate called every computer repair service in town, trying to regain access to systems she'd never bothered to understand. The password reset emails went to my old account, which I deactivated. The vendor contact database I'd built over 6 years was password protected and backed up only to my personal cloud storage. Emma drove down from Seattle that first weekend to help, but she was as helpless as her parents. She'd never paid attention to the digital infrastructure that kept the bakery running. They were forced to start rebuilding relationships from scratch, calling venues and wedding planners who assumed Brooks Family Bakery had gone out of business. The September wedding season, their busiest time of year, became a nightmare. 3 couples canceled their orders when they couldn't reach the bakery online. 2 more switched to competitors after Kate couldn't provide updated photos of recent work, all stored in accounts I'd locked. Bob finally hired a tech consultant, paying $3,000 to rebuild their basic web presence. But the consultant couldn't recreate the customer relationships, community partnerships, or marketing strategies I'd developed. Those had been built on personal connections and years of trust building that money couldn't replace. The financial impact became clear when their Q4 revenue dropped by 40%. The Christmas season, normally their most profitable time, saw massive cancellations as corporate clients who'd worked with me personally took their business elsewhere. I learned all this 6 months later through an unexpected source. Marcus Chen, a photographer I'd worked with on multiple weddings, contacted me through LinkedIn. He'd moved to Atlanta and wanted to collaborate on projects in Georgia. "I have to tell you," he said during our video call, "Brooks Family Bakery has become a cautionary tale in the Cedar Falls wedding industry. Everyone knows they lost their secret weapon when you left. Kate's been trying to poach marketing staff from competitors, but she can't afford what skilled people cost." He shared more details that confirmed my worst suspicions about my family's character. Kate had been telling vendors that I'd stolen business information and sabotaged their systems out of spite. She painted herself as the victim of an ungrateful daughter's betrayal, but Marcus revealed something else. "The funny thing is, everyone in the wedding industry knew you were the talent behind their success. When word got out about what happened at Emma's wedding, a lot of vendors were actually relieved to cut ties with them. Your parents' reputation for being difficult to work with wasn't exactly a secret." Meanwhile, my own life in Savannah was flourishing beyond my wildest dreams. I joined a book club at the local library, volunteered with a literacy program, and started dating David Rodriguez, a gentle architect who treated me like I mattered. Not because of what I could do for him, but because of who I was. David knew nothing about my family drama when we met. To him, I was simply Sarah, the creative marketing consultant with a quick laugh and passionate opinions about historical preservation. When I finally told him my story months later, his response was perfect. "They didn't deserve you, and I'm grateful their loss was my gain." The true justice, though, came in how completely I stopped caring about their opinion of me. The first few months in Savannah, I'd found myself crafting imaginary conversations with my parents, explaining my choices and defending my actions. But gradually, those mental arguments faded. I stopped checking their social media, stopped wondering how they were managing without me. I was building something beautiful with my life, surrounded by people who valued me authentically. The marketing business grew steadily, specializing in helping small businesses and nonprofits tell their stories effectively. I was doing work that mattered, with clients who appreciated my contributions. One year after leaving Cedar Falls, I received an unexpected email from Emma. The subject line read, "I owe you an apology." The message was longer than any communication she'd ever sent me. "Sarah, I've spent the past year watching Mom and Dad struggle to maintain the bakery without your help, and I finally understand what we lost when we drove you away. I was wrong to stay silent during your years of unpaid labor, wrong to joke about your dedication with my friends, and especially wrong to let them treat you like disposable help instead of family. The business is failing. They've had to lay off 2 employees and cut their hours. The community partnerships you built are gone, and their reputation in the wedding industry is permanently damaged. But more than that, I've realized how much I took your love and sacrifice for granted. I don't expect forgiveness, and I know I don't deserve it. But I needed you to know that I finally see how badly we failed you. And I'm sorry it took losing you completely for me to understand your value. If you're happy in your new life, then I'm glad you found the courage to leave us. You deserved better than what we gave you. Your sister, if you'll still claim me, Emma." I read the email twice, waiting for the surge of vindication or anger or sadness. Instead, I felt nothing. Not coldness exactly, but detachment. Emma's apology was probably sincere, but it was also years too late and prompted by consequences rather than genuine reflection. I didn't respond, not out of cruelty, but because I had nothing to say. The Sarah who had desperately craved Emma's acknowledgement was gone. The woman I'd become didn't need her validation. That night, David and I sat on our apartment balcony, watching the sunset paint Savannah's skyline in shades of gold and pink. He held my hand and asked, "Any regrets about leaving Oregon?" I thought about the question seriously, considering everything I'd left behind and everything I'd gained. The answer came easily. None, not a single one. Justice, I'd learned, wasn't about my family suffering for their choices. It was about me finally choosing myself. 2 years have passed since I disappeared from Cedar Falls, Oregon, and I'm writing this from my home office in Savannah, Georgia, where Spanish moss drapes the oak trees outside my window, and the air always smells faintly of magnolias and possibility. Sarah Michelle Creative has grown beyond my wildest expectations. I now employ 2 part-time assistants and have a waiting list of clients who want authentic, story-driven marketing that connects with hearts, not just wallets. Last month, I was featured in Southern Business Magazine as one of Georgia's rising entrepreneurs under 35. But the real success isn't professional, it's personal. I wake up every morning without that familiar knot of anxiety in my stomach, wondering what I've done wrong, or how I can do better to earn love that was never freely given. I've learned what it feels like to be valued for who I am, not what I can provide. David and I got engaged last spring. He proposed during a sunset walk through Forsyth Park, and when I called my friends to share the news, their excitement was genuine and infectious. These are people who celebrate my happiness without calculating what's in it for them, who show up because they want to, not because they need something from me. We're planning a small wedding for next fall. Intimate, joyful, focused on love rather than performance. The guest list includes chosen family, friends who've supported my journey, colleagues who've become confidants, neighbors who've welcomed me into their Savannah community. Not a single Brooks family member will be in attendance, and I feel nothing but peace about that decision. The aftermath in Cedar Falls has been predictable. Brooks Family Bakery limped through another year before Kate and Bob were forced to sell. The new owners kept the name but gutted the operations, turning it into a generic chain-style bakery that bears no resemblance to the community institution it once was. Emma and James divorced 18 months after their perfect wedding. Marcus, my photographer friend, told me the split was amicable. Apparently, James realized he'd married into a family dynamic he couldn't navigate. Emma moved back to Cedar Falls temporarily to help with the bakery sale, but she's since relocated to Denver for a fresh start. Kate sends periodic emails through mutual acquaintances, usually around holidays or family milestones. Last Christmas, she sent a card through my former coworker with a note. "The house feels empty without you. We made mistakes, but you're still our daughter." I read it once and threw it away. Being someone's daughter isn't an automatic obligation to forgive the unforgivable. Bob suffered a minor heart attack last year, and Emma sent word through the same channels, clearly hoping I'd rush back to play caretaker again. Instead, I sent flowers to the hospital with a simple note, "Wishing you good health." I felt compassion for his medical scare without feeling responsible for managing it. The most important lesson I've learned is that family isn't defined by blood or obligation. It's created through mutual respect, genuine love, and reciprocal care. My Savannah family includes Mrs. Washington, my landlord turned surrogate grandmother, who teaches me to make authentic Southern cornbread. It includes Maria Santos, the librarian who became my closest friend, and who listens to my business dreams with the same enthusiasm she brings to discussing our book club selections. It includes David's parents, who welcomed me with open arms and never once made me feel like I had to earn my place at their table. His mother, Patricia, is everything I wished Kate could have been. Supportive without being controlling, proud of my achievements without needing to diminish them. I've also learned that healing isn't linear. There are still moments when I catch myself falling into old patterns, apologizing for taking up space, or diminishing my accomplishments to make others comfortable. But now I recognize these moments and gently correct course. Therapy has helped enormously, giving me tools to understand how growing up with conditional love shaped my relationships. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, my therapist here in Savannah, helped me understand that my family's treatment wasn't a reflection of my worth. It was a reflection of their limitations. You can't earn love from people who aren't capable of giving it freely, she told me during one particularly breakthrough session. But you can learn to give that love to yourself. That's what I'm doing now, loving myself with the consistency and generosity I once reserved for people who couldn't appreciate it. I take art classes because they bring me joy. I travel when I want to explore new places. I say no to projects that don't align with my values, and I don't justify my boundaries to anyone. Most importantly, I've stopped waiting for external validation to feel worthy. My worth isn't determined by my productivity, my usefulness to others, or my ability to anticipate and meet needs that were never reasonable to begin with. I'm valuable simply because I exist, because I'm human, because I deserve love and respect as my birthright. If you're reading this story and recognizing parts of your own experience, please know that you have options. You don't have to accept crumbs from people who should be offering you full meals. You don't have to shrink yourself to fit into spaces that were never designed to accommodate your full humanity. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to walk away. Not in anger or revenge, but in self-preservation and growth. Sometimes disappearing from toxic dynamics is the only way to appear authentically in your own life. Your family of origin gave you life, but you get to decide what to do with that gift. You get to choose who deserves access to your energy, your talents, your love. You get to create the life you actually want, not the one others expect you to accept. What would you do in my situation? Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and self-respect? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and your stories help others feel less alone in their journeys. And if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is choose ourselves, and everyone deserves to hear that message. Remember, you are not responsible for managing other people's emotions, meeting unreasonable expectations, or earning love that should be freely given. You are worthy exactly as you are.